Good morning, everybody. I'm Eugene Bradley, founder and CEO of the Silicon Valley Transit Users. Today is April 28th, 2022. I have video from yesterday's joint board meeting between VTA and BART to discuss the BART extension into downtown San Jose and eventually Santa Clara. In this video, you'll find VTA board members and staff admitting that they are over $1.6 billion short of funding needed to complete Phase 2 of this BART extension, which will go into downtown San Jose and into Santa Clara, ending at the current Caltrain station there. So, what are your feelings and ideas on how VTA should resolve this funding shortfall? Please discuss them in the comments. Enjoy the video. Thank you and have a nice day.
And look it.
All right, Elaine, we should be good. Closed captioning is now recording and we are audio recording as well, and the meeting is live.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead, April, and I see member Director Ames. I'm gonna promote her to panelist. I also see Director Dufty. I'll promote him to panelist.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Good. We can hear you loud and clear. Thank you. Director Dufty, can we do a quick mic check, please? This is Elaine, by the way, from VTA. Hello.
Hi, Elaine. Great to see you. I love that green. Yes, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Powers. This is Elaine from VTA. Can we please do a quick mic check?
Yeah, audio clear on my end. How about on your end, ma'am?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, Bob. Don't you just say 5 by 5 or something like that?
Copy that. I say
There you
copy
go.
that, or
There you go.
yeah. How are you, Mr. Hendricks? Commissioner
Life is
Hendricks?
awesome.
Good. That's great. Good to hear.
Member Chavez, this is Elaine. Can we please do a quick mic check?
Yes, thank you, Elaine.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Who else joined us?
Elaine, are you ready for us all to start?
Yes, sir. Ready when you are.
Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for attending the April 27th Joint VTA BART Working Committee meeting. I'm now going to call the meeting to order. For those of you who don't know, my name is Glenn Hendricks, and I'm a VTA BART member. And Elaine, could we please start with the roll call for the VTA members, please?
Chavez?
Here.
Yes, here. Thank you. Liccardo? All right. He's going to be joining us shortly. Hendricks?
Attending.
Perales? Your meeting as a committee of the whole on the VTA side.
Okay, great. Thank you. And April, could you please call the roll for the BART side of the house, please?
Certainly, Director Hendricks. Director Ames.
Oh, here.
Director McPartlin.
Here.
Director Duffy.
Present.
Director Saltzman. Director Saltzman is absent.
Okay, great. Thank you. And again, once again, I want to welcome everybody, all the directors from both sides of the organization, the staff members from both sides of the organization, and then also all the members of the public that are joining us today. Next, we're going to go to the Pledge of Allegiance. And for those of you that are able to stand, would you please join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We're now going to move on to public comment. Public comment for this section is for items that are not on our agenda. Any members of the public that wish to speak will have 2 minutes to speak. And I think we're going to go ahead and go over to either Elaine or Theodora who's going to do that. And I see we have at least one public speaker in the queue right now.
Yes, for Hendricks, Blair, please accept the unmute and begin speaking when you're ready.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thanks for the meeting today. This has been I've been really hoping and waiting for this meeting between BART and VTA. I know you're going to be talking about the future of the BART in San Jose, but at this public comment time, I thought it could be a good time to mention the process of the future of high-speed rail, and that BART has a really important role, I feel, in the future of high-speed rail in the Bay Area. And as BART is one of the oldest transit agencies in the Bay Area, I think they can make a really important reference point how to figure the future of high-speed rail, not only coming through San Jose, but through, say, Livermore Valley, through Fremont and I don't know, using the ACE rail, and even possibly from Antioch using, that new Antioch BART system. Is that a way to make future connections into Sacramento and from, say, Dublin into the Livermore Valley and into Tracy? The Livermore Tri-Valley Rail project that's going on right now, I think can be questionable and possibly redundant in what can be a real BART service to go to the Central Valley and to go to Sacramento. And that can be a way to address, these years-long questions that I know we've all been facing, that BART has continuously put off, but we need to be able to openly address again at this time, I feel. I hope you can and make things clear and understandable. And that way the whole process of the entire Bay Area and the future of high-speed rail can be a more open process and a more understandable process and open to everybody in our future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It doesn't look like there's any other speakers there, so I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment section. That lets us go ahead and move on to item number 3, which is an update on VTA's BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 extension project. But before we go to our staff presentation, we're going to receive some remarks from the BART and VTA general managers. And first, we're going to hear from Carolyn Gannott, the VTA general manager CEO. Carolyn, the floor is yours to share your thoughts with us.
Thank you, Chair Hendricks. And VTA members as well as BART members. I'm very happy to be here today. I'm pleased to have here and have the opportunity to sort of introduce myself to my colleagues at BART. While I'm new to the role of general manager at VTA, I recently left Utah Transit Authority. I was there for 2 years as the executive director. But, most importantly, I have had experience many years with VTA and was actually the executive in charge of the phase 1 of the BART Silicon Valley extension, which is now open and running. And I'm delighted to be back and really working with our colleagues at BART to deliver phase 2. I really enjoy working with your general manager Powers, and I know many of the people who are working on the project. So I'm happy to see them again and feel a good connection. They feel comfortable talking to me as well. I know you as directors of BART and VTA need no reminder of the importance of this project for the economic health of our region. It really, the backbone of equity-based transportation in this region is the BART system. I fully believe that. And joining the economic engine of Silicon Valley with the greater region through BART service will enhance productivity, open opportunities, and really assure a robust future for the region, and particularly for our quality of life and our ability for transportation and moving around this region. No mega project in the history of our region has ever gone forward without naysayers and skeptics, and we've had those. This project is no different. And we're well aware of all the challenges that we've faced and are still continuing to face. Major project delivery today in this environment, we're dealing with supply chain issues, worker shortages, economic uncertainty, and looming world events, which all are impacting our costs and schedules. But the most potent enemy of project delivery is delay. Nothing raises costs and extends complications like early delays in a project. But I'm pleased to inform you that we will be bringing forward the first contract award, which we'll discuss in the presentation, to the phase 2 extension at the May 5th VTA board meeting. And the contract will enable us to move the system design forward and continue with our schedule. Awarding this contract will be our opportunity to work closely with our colleagues at BART and the contractor to identify innovations and potential savings to help finalize the financial plan for the project. And we've heard comments from BART board directors as well as community members in our cities as improvements they'd like to see in the design. And I think the contractor we have and the innovations will actually allow us to do that and hit the ground running. That's the very first piece of work that we would be doing with the contractor. At the same time, we'll be establishing a funding plan to address the, as FTA says, $9 billion to cover the FTA's assessment of the potential exposure for this project. As you know, the FTA requires a funding plan in order to finalize a full funding grant agreement for this project, and we will provide one. That is one of the things we'll be doing concurrently. We're updating the information that we have, particularly based on what has happened over the last few years. And as we see going forward, we'll be looking at both our operating and maintenance costs, not just VTAs, but also for BART, so that we can meet our BART obligations, and which we believe we will. We wouldn't go forward otherwise, and that we will also be able to fund this project and make it a very successful project for this region. I do, as I just mentioned a little bit, that I recognize there's justifiable concern over the O&M cost for the project. It got mentioned in the paper. We'll try to provide some explanation to some of that discussion that was in the media this past week. The BART board is certainly prudent to be concerned in this area. And let me assure you that we take this obligation seriously. We contractually obligated to BART to cover this cost, but personally, and I know many of our board members will also not move forward without our obligation to be fulfilled. We wouldn't put any of our agencies in that position. As the ultimate last resort, we have our TDA funding guaranteeing this obligation, but we really are looking at trying to see, is there really truly a shortfall, and what we would need to do if that was happening. So we will continue to move forward with that. I want to say thanks for the opportunity to present our substantial progress on this vital regional project today. I look forward to building on our successful collaboration with our colleagues at BART and delivering this once in a generation project. Successful completion will, in my opinion, have a greater impact on the economic viability of our region. since the iconic Golden Gate Bridge was built, and the Bay Bridge, and the BART system, the original BART system. I think those are three of the most iconic projects in the Bay Area that has connected our region. And I think this project is so important to finish that last connection around the Bay. So anyways, I want to thank you for the time. That might have been a little long and more of an intro, but I really just wanted to have you understand sort of how my role will be in this. I guarantee I will be very involved in this and with our board. And I'm just am happy to be able to have our staff, both of our staffs, present information today. Thank you. And I'm going to turn this over to Bob Power, General Manager Bob Powers, to say some words.
Thank you, Carolyn. I'm sitting here listening to Carolyn and I kind of laughed a little bit because she called me General Manager Powers. If you don't know, Carolyn and I know each other. We go way back. I was the deputy at BART. She was the deputy at VTA. We meet, at least weekly, if not daily, or, on topics and talking. I don't think I have ever heard her refer to me as General Manager Powers. So anyway, Carolyn, thank you for that title. That's very nice of you. Hey, I'm not going to repeat anything that Carolyn said, but I would add a couple of things to it. So first, as the general manager of BART, in full support of this project, BART Phase 2, Silicon Valley, tying into where we left off with Phase 1 and wrapping around to the university. So I just wanted to start with that I, as the general manager, in full support of this project. And I think this project is critical. It's critical to the future of the Bay Area from, a mobility standpoint, from an equity standpoint. So there is no bigger supporter than Carolyn and I on this project. And so I just wanted to start with that. The second point I would like to make is I too look forward to working with Carolyn. This committee, which I think, I can talk a little bit on later, Chairperson Hendricks, that the cadence of this committee, maybe that's a discussion at some point, needs to be a little bit more often. I don't know the last time it met, but I think this committee is a good thing, and meeting a little bit more routinely might be in order, but that's for you and the other elected officials to discuss. But, I'm looking forward to working with Carolyn, VTA, BART, the two respective boards, to make sure that we are all on the same page on the cost of the project. And there's been a lot of talk on the capital cost, but focusing on the O&M costs for Phase 1 and for Phase 2, let's get a good understanding of that, a base that we're both on the same information data with forward, so that when the project goes into revenue service, there's no ambiguity there about O&M costs and where they're going. So, looking forward. And I had a long chat with Carolyn on this, this week. So I wanted to put that out there, as well as on the capital side. And then the other point I do want to make is, so I do know capital project delivery. And in my opinion, this project is at a very critical stage. And, there's no better time, than now and in the coming months for BART and VTA to kind of reaffirm their partnership, the communication, no surprises, and working collaboratively together, so we're ready for the future of this project. So, right now is, in my opinion, that critical juncture that, there needs to be, that BART and VTA need to be together completely on this and no space between us. And so with that, Carolyn, I will turn this back over to Commissioner, and we'll go with we'll run into the agenda here.
Hey, thank you. I want to thank both Carolyn, and I want to be able to say General Manager Powers, that for those opening comments. And I think, the part that you were just saying at the end there, Bob, of that no space between us, and being able to be in sync on what's going on and making sure we've got the appropriate staff level, GM level, board level communications going on is absolutely correct. So I think everybody here is going to try and help with that. We're going to move on next to the people who are giving the presentation for us. I have 4 different names of people that are going to be part of the presentation, which is Takis Salpeas, the BART Silicon Valley Extension Project Manager. We have Carl Holmes, the Assistant General Manager at BART in Design and Construction. Bernice Alinas, the Director of SVRT Business Operations, and Greg Richardson, the VTA CFO. And so Takis, I think, do I pass the ball to you to start things off?
Good afternoon, everybody. I go on Elaine, page 3, please. Nothing new to you here. This is the project. This is what we are proceeding to deliver. Still has 6 months, still 6 months long, 4 stations, and a major BART yard, which we believe is critical for BART operations. Next page, please. Just some recent highlights to share with you. It's the same highlights I share with my board of directors every month. We continue, FTA is all over our project. We meet with them every 3 weeks to 4 weeks. We have discussions with them, and slowly we're moving towards the full funding agreement. As you all know, President Biden in his fiscal year 2020 marked $200 million for the project. I consider this to be the first construction money allocation, if you like it. Our real estate acquisitions, quite a few of them, and we're moving along very well as we plan. FDA is very much supportive. They approve all our appraisals, and we're moving as planned. Now we are in the second round of cooperative agreements with the cities of San Jose, city of Santa Clara, and we plan to finish all of them in the next couple of months. This is more of a technical in nature agreements than the previous one, the master agreement and the comprehensive agreement we have with each of these cities. And the last point I like to share here with you is that also we have technical agreements underway with JPB, for example, the Joint Powers Board, because some of you recall we're going under the tracks with PG&E, among other, BART has the agreement with PG&E for permanent power, and we have the agreement with them for temporary power. Specialty to that, it will be the power they're going to provide for our TBM. For that, we continue in all fronts here, and I'm pleased to tell you that we're making good progress. I'll come back later in the presentation to share with you the update on our procurement plan, and I will pass it now to my colleague, Carl Holmes. He would like to update you of our joint efforts here to get this project along the lines of what Bob and Powers will say, no space in between. For that, Carl.
Thank you, Takis. If we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So I wanted to highlight the partnership that we, BART and VTA, have together. The first part of the update is the milestone of completing the design criteria manual. That's something that you've heard about before, and each time we would give you the progress that we were getting closer and closer, and but almost there. But I can say that we have completed that effort. Of course, along with that, there will be updates along the way as the design advances, given that we have or we will have contracts that will either be design build or progressive design build. And so it's expected that the design criteria will need to be evaluated in this multi-year project. In regards to the contract packages themselves, CP1, that's the systems contract package. We are in the process of updating the general requirements, which is part of volume 1. So there's 4 volumes that are part of the contract packages. And so we're updating that volume, which would also be used for the other contract packages in the RFP process. In regards to CP2, the tunnel and track, which that's the main focus in terms of the updates that we're providing. We participated in the evaluation process in regards to not only the short listing, but also in evaluating the responses to the RFP and participating in the scoring. In regards to CP3 and CP4, we're actively participating in the one-on-one meetings with the shortlisted teams, and then with the stations, we're working together on revising the contract package and making sure that it's aligned with CP2, given the possibility of innovations that we just wouldn't want that to get ahead of a future contract package. Other areas of the partnership, the project team presented to two of the committees of the BART board. One is the BART Accessibility Task Force, as well as the Bicycle Advisory Task Force. That was done this month and last month, and it got good reviews, really good reviews. In regards to, I won't get into all of these, but in regards to the partnership with Spur and City of San Jose, there was a workshop that was held recently in regards to trying to find ways to make the station design better for customer experience, as well as finding ways or exploring ways to improve on the single bore tunnel. You heard about the financial shortfall that was part of the VTA board workshop, but Greg Richardson will get more into that. So we can go to the next slide.
You have the next. Yeah, you are up.
Yes, I know. So this slide is focusing on the code compliance efforts, namely with the fire, life, safety, and security. So if you recall that we have established a fire, life, safety, and security committee, which consists of employees and consultants of BART and VTA, as well as it includes members of the fire departments, both San Jose and Santa Clara. Within that, we also have a fire, life, safety technical working group, and that group meets biweekly with the fire departments in regards to not only establishing the relationship, but also touching on some of the aspects of the design criteria. And I would say right now, the focus has been looking at areas of the future yard design, but also knowing that there's elements of the tunnel design that have been reviewed, but as that design advances, we need to make sure that we continue that in support of safe and quick egress for passengers, as well as safe and quick entrance from first responders. The CPUC is well aware of these efforts, and they're pleased with the collaboration that's happening at that level. And with that, I'll turn it back to Takis.
The next slide, Mr. Chairman, I asked Bernice to give you a quick update of the state of that funding and how all these things coming together. Bernice, I cannot see you. Are you there?
I'm here. Thank you.
So please.
As previously shared, VTA applied for federal funding through the Federal Transit Administration's Expedited Project Delivery Pilot Program, known as EPD. Last October, VTA received a letter of intent from the Federal Transit Administration. This letter announced FTA's intent to obligate 25% of the final projected project cost through a full funding grant agreement and through the EPD program once VTA satisfies the requirements of the LOI by October of 2023. As part of the customary process in the federal grants program, the FTA conducts a risk assessment. FTA's risk assessment provided a probabilistic project cost of $9.1 billion. With the LOI in effect, VTA is proceeding to establish a refined cost estimate that will be based on actual construction bids, further mitigate or eliminate these perceived risks, and secure additional funding to ultimately achieve an FFGA. VTA is advancing project activities with pre-award authority to incur costs for engineering activities, early construction works, utility relocation, real estate acquisition, and other non-construction activities such as procurement of equipment and long lead items. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernice. The next page, Mr. Chairman, I will ask my colleague to my left, our VTA CFO, Mr. Greg Richardson, to address a couple of issues which have become the interest of a lot of you the last few days. Greg?
Thank you, Takis. So as we start on slide 8, I'd like to provide a little comments and context to sort of help frame this conversation a little bit in this discussion. So there was a workshop held last Friday morning for the VTA board that was meant to bring awareness of an overall finance assessment that was done during the latter part of calendar year 2021. And that assessment covered many elements of the finance organization and was meant to identify opportunities and potential risks for the incoming CFO, and now that being me. And so ultimately, my job is to evaluate the assessment and determine if risks do indeed exist, and recognize any long-term items that need to be on the radar to assess and mitigate. And so two of the items that were brought forward in the assessment and presented to the VTA board last Friday related to the BART project cost or project funding and the BART O&M costs and the potential impact to the 2008 Measure B dollars. So we'll start first on the project funding piece. And a lot of this has already been said, but I want to sort of categorize it so that there's an understanding of sort of the approach that we're taking. So at this point, I believe there's general acceptance that the cost of the project will exceed the original $6.9 billion. However, at this point, we don't have a firm estimate of that total. That's yet to be determined. And now additionally, as Bernice just mentioned, we have a letter of intent of the FTA's participation in the project that expires in October of 2023. And that fundamentally sets the timeline for us to secure and or execute a full funding grant agreement before then. And so as Takis will talk about later, we are in the process of issuing contracts and or RFPs to bring more certainty to that aggregate cost. But in the meantime, we also know that the FTA has communicated what we'll call their estimate of the project to be $9.15 billion. So while the contract and RFP process moves forward, we need to focus on identifying other sources of funding to reach whatever that eventual amount will be with the FFGA. So to not lose time for the work that's necessary, we are using the FTA estimate of $9.15 billion basically as our funding ceiling to solve that funding equation. And as we said before, we don't believe this will be the final cost, but it does provide at least a target for us right now to determine options for funding. Now, one other item that was referenced in the assessment that was talked about Friday was moving from EPD to new starts. And this reference was really about changing the percentage. So, given the potential funding gap, the assessment simply identified the need to increase the funding from the maximum amount under EPD of 25% to a value at or above, if we can get there, above 35%. At this point, we're evaluating every option that exists potentially for us to make that type of move. And in that evaluation, the goal with whatever approach we take will be to not impact the overall construction schedule of the project. So that's the funding piece. The second piece on the O&M that was raised. So again, this was an assessment. So the assessment identified what was potentially a risk over the next, call it 7 to 10 years. And this risk was based on long-term projections that, in my opinion, have a tendency to be a little conservative. And now I need to evaluate those. Now, to eliminate what I hope is some of the immediate concern, we do expect to end fiscal year 22 with approximately $310 million in 2008 Measure B funds. Now, the issue related to the assessment was just escalation assumptions for O&M and capital maintenance costs, with potentially conservative estimates for 2008 Measure B sales tax proceeds and fare revenues. So there are many variables that are at play in projecting the cost and overall impact. And my anticipation is to work with the BART team on updating those costs and schedules, especially those related to project completion with phase 2, to really get a clearer picture of VTA's anticipated obligation and the long-term potential impact on 2008 Measure B availability. And so ultimately, if we see a budget shortfall in the future, I would say there's two things we'll immediately do. One would work closely with BART to find mutually beneficial alternatives, hopefully to mitigate any potential shortfall. Ultimately, VTA will work to secure another funding source to ensure the O&M agreement is met. Now, ultimately, if no funding source can be secured, then VTA will utilize a portion of their TDA funds to provide the needed funding until an alternate source can be found. So that's a recap of what this slide is meant to address, and I'm sure we can answer questions later. So I'll turn it back to Takis.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you. Page 9, Elaine. This is the typical page. I update our board of directors every month, especially the VTA board. I go to more details a little bit for that. You all recall the project is being expedited, if you like it, via 5 construction contracts. The first contract we call a CP1, is a systems contract. Carl gave you a good insight of what the activities are underway right now. And we put out the final draft RFP mid-April, about a week ago, I believe, and we are expecting to start the interviews again with the contractor, the collaboration sometime at the early summer. And we plan to release the final RFP the end of the summer. I shall remind you that we have to wait to get the schedule from the tunnel contractor, which I will talk to you in a minute, in order to finalize the handover dates on the CP1. For that, we're working on that as well. With regard to tunnel and track work contract, the contract number 2, I have some good news to share with you. The good news is we do have a ranking proposer. And like Caroline said before, we are planning to go to be in front of the VTA board to ask for an award. Now, let me clarify what that award will be. As you know, this contract is a progressive design build, 2 stages. The first stage is the engineering aspects. Therefore, we're going to ask the winning contractor to complete an engineering and come back and tell us what the price of this contract will be. For that, we have continued doing the work with the contractor, and the award by the VTA board, it will be for an amount around 235 million, plus 4 million for the bonds, plus 15 million for allowances to allow the contractor to do field work, which means surveys, investigations, further geotechnical and so on. For that, if everything, now, we are very vested to this action by our board because the contractor has offered several innovations, which he proposed to us. We do not own them, he owns them, part of the contract. We are not allowed to talk yet before we award the phase 1. But some of us, like Carl and I, part of the executive evaluation committee, we know there are some really promising items there. For that, we want to hurry up and give him the 90 days he asked us to further design and price those innovations. For that, we are anticipating to send out what we call a notice of recommended award. It's part of our procurement process. We need to let the contractor know that we anticipate to ask our board for approval on May 5th. The next contract is the Santa Clara station and the New Hall Yard. And we're making good progress there. And we put the draft RFP out last month in March, and we started also already the first round of interviews. We still have some work to do there. You know, we are building a major yard with the maintenance shops and related facilities. For that, staff probably will take a couple more months to finalize the documents like Carl said. And the last contract is the stations. We have paused on this contract. We are not making any additional contractual arrangements yet. Why? Because we wanted to really have the staff work with the other 2 contracts. There are connectivities, if you like it, between the tunnel contract, for example, and the stations. You understand why. The stations are to serve the railroad inside the tunnel. Also, we haven't finished completely the coordination of the technical aspects with the city of San Jose, and we want to buy a little bit more time. And of course, with the BART colleagues and so on. For that, I'm gonna let you know, hopefully by the end of this year, how the schedule for the stations look like. And my last page, it's nothing new to you. This is the schedule I've been briefing you for the 25 months I have been here, 26 today. And to remind you to see at the bottom where it says 2-year FTA LOI window. This is the 2 years the feds gave us to really work out the LOI, like Caroline mentioned and Bernice. for that October 2023 is the deadline for that LOI. For that, us owners, as the delivery agent for this program, what do we need? We have told FTA in our monthly discussions with them that we are anticipating the first quarter of 2023 to have prices from the three major contracts I just told you, to know all pertinent information about our real estate acquisitions. Real estate is significant, as you know, but we need to know that price. And then we're gonna perform a final engineering estimate on our stations. FTA is totally okay with that. They're gonna get 3 actual price from the market. They're gonna get a price for our real estate from the acquisitions we're going, and they're gonna accept an estimate for our stations contract. Based on that, decision will be made to move on to the full funding agreement and the size of the full funding agreement and so on. Well, Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything else to add here. Myself, Carl, and Greg, we are here to answer any questions you may have. You are muted, Mr. Chairman, you are muted.
Thank you. So Takas, I was just saying, Takas, thank you to you, Carl, Bernice, and Greg for giving us the lightning round presentation of what's going on. To all my board colleagues, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to public comments, and then we'll bring back and we'll come to the different board members to see if they have any thoughts to go ahead and share. So Elaine, can we go ahead and go to our public speakers, please? And I see there's at least 3 right now.
Yes, so the order of the speakers will be Mark, Blair, then Andrea. Mark, please accept the unmute.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes.
Hi there, Mark Molyneux, part of several orgs in Santa Clara County. Yeah, I think one thing is very important here is that for months, VTA said the cost won't be 9.1 billion, it'll be 6.9 billion. And then today we see, no, it actually is 9.1 billion and we need more funding. I just think we're seeing this constant pattern of going ahead with this plan because it's the easier plan. When in fact, if we switch over to a dual bore plan, we'll come out ahead. We can actually pay everyone off, including the local merchants. We need to look at the long term here. Basically, the way the transit works here, we need to leverage useful transit, TOD, and work forward to actually making something that we'll want to use for decades. Look at BART in Oakland. When they deferred to local shopkeepers in Oakland for the Y, they made a close small diameter Y that to this day is a deficit of the system. They should have looked at the longer term and not just buckled to local merchants. Look at VTA with its path of TOD for the light rail. They didn't look in the long term, and it really is not a great system today. So I would like to see more courage here, but in general, I think with BART at the table, we need to look at the unseriousness of VTA here, just trying to kick the can down the road. This puts Link 21 in danger. We need a lot more oversight here and actually say, it is not too late to both save money, make a better system, and we'll look back on this and say, it's an important crossroads. So thank you for your time.
Next speaker is Blair. Please unmute and begin speaking.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman here to try to quickly offer in my inexperience about this sort of efforts. This was work to talk about the future of funding and for the BART into San Jose. It was issues it came into relevance during the era of COVID and General Manager Nuria Fernandez's last year here at VTA. And I think if you look back at that time and the roadmap she planned out at that time for the future of funding issues, it is workable. Something could be worked out. We were threading a needle and it was a difficult balance. And new variations and questions are coming up at this time. I think there can be ways to really navigate the bond issues involved. And I wish yourselves luck in doing this. I think it was planned that we can work through this. I think Mayor Liccardo of San Jose has some interesting ideas to do that. I'm trusting how we can continue this process, and it'll take work from all of us and good efforts, oversight, to bring in public oversight, to bring in good processes can be hopeful. And just know we've had some good beginnings of how to talk about this issue. It's just a matter that we know how to continue to talk about them in the next few years. Thank you.
The next three speakers would be Andrea, Laura, and East Bay for everyone. Andrea, please accept the unmute.
Hi, my name.
Oops.
Andrea, can you stop for a second? You were speaking and then not.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. Sorry about that. My name is Andrea Horbinski, and I'm a transit writer in the East Bay, and I'm super excited about the project moving forward. Very much looking forward to being able to take BART to San Jose and to the Santa Clara airport. But I've been following the project for a while. And like the previous commenter, I'm very concerned about the rising costs associated with this, sort of sunk cost fallacy that's arisen around the single bore project. And I really think that, there's a lot of indicators that it's going to be much more costly and take longer to implement than the dual bore alternative, which is environmentally cleared. And which, will involve more short-term pain, assuredly, but will definitely pay off in terms of long-term gain for the system, for the riders, and for the area and both systems, VTA and BART. As a rider in other transit areas around the world, I've been in some of these really deep stations. They're very, they don't feel good for riders. I'd be very concerned to them in terms of safety, for fires, for emergencies. And also as a cyclist, it's a real pain in the ass to haul a bike all the way down there and back up. And I really think sticking with the single bore plan will result in a worse experience and, cost more, and also in the end, have lower potential ridership than the dual bore alternative. I can't speak today. So I do want to urge the board to continue to think about switching to the dual bore alternative as soon as possible to save money and have a better experience for everybody involved. Thank you.
Next speaker is Laura. Please accept the unmute.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Laura Tolkoff, Transportation Policy Director for SPUR. SPUR is a longtime supporter of BART Phase 2, and we are very invested in its success. We appreciate that staff are bringing the financial challenges to the boards today. We are concerned about the capital and operating shortfalls. Not only do we want to see BART reach Dearborn Station, but we also have serious concerns about the financial outlook of BART and VTA in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. This project has to consider that current environment, and we hope that VTA can come back to both boards very soon with a funding plan that includes both new funds and cost reductions, as well as cost control measures. These cost reductions, importantly, should not come at the expense of future riders. Given that the VTA team is also in final negotiations for the tunneling contract, for the first phase of the tunneling contract, now is the time to specify supplemental designs that the contractor should develop as part of the progressive design build contract. We encourage board members to direct VTA staff and the new contractor team to develop and evaluate the following a set of design alternatives to the single bore project. Our letter enumerates about a half dozen possible improvements that have been identified through collaboration, and we hope collaboration with VTA, San Jose, and BART, and we hope that these are explicitly incorporated in the contract upon approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speakers would be East Bay, Adam, then Adina. East Bay, please accept the unmute. East Bay for everyone, please accept the unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, my name is Joshua Hahn. I'm a transit writer in the East Bay in Alameda County. I wanted to voice my concerns about phase 2 for the project. I'm hoping that we can switch to a dual bore rather than single bore plan. I think this has a big impact on the capital costs, the station access, and the potential for transit-oriented development and value capture around the stations. That in the long term, it's going to have an impact on revenue for operations and maintenance and on ridership. I also had a question about whether access and life and safety scope changes will impact the tunnel construction package. And if so, why are we rushing to award the construction package so soon? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker would be Adam. Please accept the unmute.
Hi, I'm Adam Bookbinder. I live in Campbell. I'm a longtime user of VTA buses and light rail. There's been a lot of discussion lately about the merits of single versus dual bore construction. I'm concerned that a consensus has developed that it's too late to consider that we may have made a mistake, that the only option is to charge forward despite the probable unnecessary expenditure of billions of dollars to make a riskier, less accessible project. We don't always get it right the first time. The problem is when we're so frightened we've made a mistake that we can't fix it. Please support an independent peer review to understand the costs and benefits of a single bore versus dual bore approach before we move forward with contracts for tunneling. The decisions we make now will affect our infrastructure for decades to come. We cannot afford not to make sure we do it right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Adam. Next speaker would be Adina. Please accept the unmute.
Good afternoon, board members. Adina Levin with Friends of Caltrain and Transbay Coalition. Wanted to echo several of the previous comments, including Spur's comment to look at supplemental important design issues that have been raised by San Jose City Council and others in terms of wanting to have multiple entrances, in terms of wanting to maximize transit-oriented development potential, and importantly, in terms of protecting the downtown businesses against impacts. And along the lines of what the previous speaker said, to do that with a peer review, with an apples to apples comparison of the single bore deep tunnel with the dual bore to see whether that dual bore would in fact save money and be able to deliver things more frequently. This is a really important turning point in time. In terms of the funding, it is going to be important to get voter confidence to continue to pay for the capital and the operations. And it will certainly be easier to raise that voter confidence if it's possible to say, you know, this is the way to do the project that is the most cost effective and delivers those design benefits and business protection benefits that we realize that we want. When the decisions were made, some of these issues were not well understood and they are better understood now. So now is the time to take a look and see what is the best way to achieve those goals with the most cost-effective project that we can. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ryan. Please accept the unmute.
Thank you. So my name is Ryan Globus. I live in San Jose near the Diridon station, and I am also on the VTA Citizens Advisory Committee, although I'm speaking on behalf of myself only. I want to echo what the previous speakers have said and support to make sure we're really, making the best decision before we start, getting shovels in the ground. And I want to call out a couple other things that haven't been mentioned yet. So one is at the Diridon station. We have two major destinations for BART. We have the SAP Center, and we have the connections to Caltrain and Amtrak and light rail and VTA buses and all the other services at that station. Two potential issues that I'm concerned about is one, with single bore, you can only have a station on one side of the street. And so for one of those, you'll have to cross the street, and that's something that the San Jose City Council has expressed concern and wants entrances and exits on both sides of the street. As well as at Diridon, there's talks or potential plans to raise the tracks up higher for when high-speed rail comes. And that'll make the transfer distance between Caltrain high-speed rail, Amtrak to BART even further than it already would be. And so I'm very worried about that experience. Like a previous speaker mentioned, you know, we're paying the price with the Oakland Y decision for generations. I always think about, you know, my experience when transferring between Caltrain and BART at Millbrae. It is not always great, especially if you have to go through SFO. You know, they have the changing service patterns. I think, you know, BART has constantly changed how they run the lines through that area because it's just fundamentally designed poorly. I think they've done the best they can currently with the red and yellow lines. And so I've been very happy with that, but it's something that we have to riders and BART has had to deal with for generations. So I hope we can make this project the best for generations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Looks like
the spoken comments, and I do want to note for the record that we received written comments from Spur and Mr. Dearborn, and those are in the online agenda packet. Thank you.
yeah, it looks like there's two more speakers.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. They just raised their hands.
Yep.
Gerald, please accept the unmute.
Hello, this is Gerald Cawthon. I'm the president of the Bay Area Transportation Working Group, and I wanted to just add to what a couple of the speakers have said. Maybe there's a way to save some costs here that aren't being adequately considered. I'll just give one incident. Back a long time ago, BART was built under Market Street in San Francisco. All of the stations were built cut and cover, as are most stations all over the world. But that was a mess because San Francisco decided to leave 2 streetcar tracks on the surface of Market during the entire time of the construction, which vastly compounded that project. Now, Santa Clara, my feeling is that maybe some of the businesses in Santa Clara along Santa Clara Avenue thought that that's what they were confronted with if cut and cover was permitted on that one station. But as you all know, there are no tracks on Santa Clara Avenue, and this is a very smooth operation, can be done with minimal effect. Not no effect, but minimal effect. Thank you.
Yeah, Elaine, before we go to the next speakers, to the public, if there's any, we've got 2 more speakers who want to speak. If anybody else wants to speak, can you please raise your hand? So otherwise we're going to start cutting things off. Thank you.
Next 2 speakers would be Jordan and Monica. Jordan, please accept and mute.
Yes, thank you so much. Good afternoon, directors. My name is Jordan Grimes. I'm a lifelong Bay Area resident and transit writer, as well as a lead member with Housing and Transit Advocacy Group Peninsula for Everyone. I just want to join the chorus of voices today calling for peer review of a dual bore option over the single bore plan currently being considered. As others have said, massive infrastructure projects like this are not easy. In fact, are basically impossible to change in the future and must be done right the first time. Having experienced single bore stations in other parts of the world, I really believe as far as the rider experience, that pursuing one here would be a mistake for so many reasons, not just for the rider experience, which I think will be diminished with this type of station, but also due to the financial cost. I think we would all like to live in a world where there was unlimited funding for public transit. That's unfortunately not the reality that we live in. There is considerably limited funding for public transit. And that means we need to make the most of every single dollar that we have. And I don't believe that this plan, does it. And moreover, I think it sets a really bad precedent for other transit projects in the region. If we don't stop this here, if we don't take a look and say, all right, we're going to review this, we're going to see if we are truly pursuing the best path here, the most economically savvy path, I think it could set a really bad precedent for other projects in the region. So I would encourage a peer review of a dual bore option of cut and cover. And I thank you so much for your time today.
Next speaker is Monica. Please accept the unmute.
Hi, my name is Monica Mallon, and I'm a transit rider in Santa Clara County, and just want to say that I do support the current design, and I'm really excited about this project. There's been a lot of negativity in the media and in the transit advocacy community for as long as I've been involved But I really think that this project is going to be a massive benefit for residents, including myself. And also just want to say that I'm really thankful for all the work that VTA has done on this. It's taken so much work to get to this point and to secure all the funding for this, and they don't get enough credit. Thank you.
Okay,
That
thank you.
concludes public comment.
Yeah, that looks like that's the last of our public speakers. I'm going to close the public comment section. I want to thank all the speakers who came and talked to us. And now I want to go ahead and throw it back to the different board members from either VTA or the BART side. And it looks like we're going to start with Director Dufty.
Thank you. I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate what the public members have spoken to. And I guess I want to rewind a little bit to the beginning of our meeting, because as a public official, as someone that works in government, I think that it is absolutely imperative that we work together in a collaborative, candid, and a timely basis. And so I have heard our general manager say, that there will be no space between us, but I would like an acknowledgement that that things should have been handled differently. And I think that there's some surprises. I think that there's some lack of inclusion of BART staff. And I guess I want to be candid and say I would appreciate an acknowledgement of that, because I think that that is important to the collaboration that we have. I would like to say that it would be helpful if both VTA and BART staff could talk about the expenditure of funds based on the current design for the station, for the single bore station. And it's my understanding that as VTA has moved forward with design and engineering, that it is not as clear that a dual bore would be more cost effective. And so, I'm not specifically asking for a peer review. I think that our agencies need to work together. If it is appropriate to have a peer review, I'm content with that. I do recognize that you have a contract package that is prepared to be awarded, and that there are certainly benefits of bringing that talent in to look at these situations. But I do also want to say that I come from a background of working on the LA Metro system, both as a congressional aide and then as a staff member at the forerunner agency, the LA County Transportation Commission. And I want to acknowledge that BART, as a leading agency with Link 21, that we are looking at implementing transit projects that are not harming communities that deserve great transit. And the VTA CEO talked about equity in transit. So I do want to say that as we have looked at Link 21, we've wanted to do some things differently. So by saying that, I appreciate what the motivation has been from VTA board members who've been concerned about damaging the vitality of an area and having that last for a generation. I represent 16th and 24th Street stations in the Mission, and everyone knows the harm that was caused in how that project was implemented. I worked in Los Angeles when the route was dramatically changed from going west from downtown to going north into the valley, and the damage that was done to Hollywood businesses really came to characterize the overall system. You really have one time to really do it right. I do agree with the speakers, and I just want to be sensitive to the fact that I'd really like a good understanding of what type of review can take place that can help understand these options. I'd like to understand funds that have already been expended, and then as it relates to the current contract package, some discussion of the importance of moving forward with that and what will that allow VTA to use. But again, I appreciate the hands raised, and I just think it's very important going forward. When I chaired the BART board, we probably met 4 times that year in joint committee. And I do think that that is very important to bring us together to have the confidence of our transit riders in this region that we're going to do this right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It looked like Carolyn, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, I just want to respond, or at least speak to Director Duffy's comments. I think I do think we didn't mean to hide anything from you. There's been a number of discussions from BART to VTA in terms of the cost numbers. I think it got a little out of hand because we were just trying to present the risks that our CFO has to be aware of this project. And I am happy we're bringing it forward. I do think having having some meetings where we're meeting at these milestones, but the milestones don't have to be 12 months apart. So I think they're critical milestones in terms of making sure that our agencies are moving forward fiscally responsibly for the best that our riders and our regions deserve. And I think that's what we need to talk about. So, we will continue to provide more conversations. I have to say, Bob and I are going to be meeting fairly regularly we see each other regularly, but oftentimes, we don't have time to talk about this project specifically, but those conversations will take more often. I think with the contractor coming in on some of these innovations and designs and looking at some of these potentials that might really address some of the questions and the comments that we're hearing from others, I think will allow our agencies to work very closely together in a collaborative manner to finalize and to move forward this project and the design. And I think I'm sort of excited about that because it's really sort of getting to the point where we're not just in a design phase, but still trying to figure out how we can address these issues. We have to start addressing some of the issue about connections and station access points, and those types of things really are going to be looked at in this next, I would say, next 3 to 6 months. And I think those results should be shared with our boards as well, so that everybody feels comfortable moving forward. Now, as the answers to your other questions that you asked, I may have to direct those over to Greg and to Takas. So Takas, did you have anything to add on that?
No, we don't have anything to add. I think you said everything, and Director Duffy knows me a little bit. I feel a little bit offended when you say I don't share everything with Carl and St. Edwards. For that, I'm telling you, there is nothing I know that these two men don't know. For that, I do my best. Sometimes maybe I'm a day late, and they never let me forget about it. For that, from my point of view, I have as a priority to keep Carl and St. and of course through them Bob Powers very well informed. For that, I wanted to really give you again my commitment on that.
So I want to go ahead and add. So to Director Duffy, your comment is appropriate, and it's really on me as far as how this was done for this last couple of days. When we talk about the board presentation that was done for the workshop, when I did that, it was really a singular focus to inform our board. And unfortunately for me, I just didn't look beyond what we were doing for that board presentation. And to be honest with you, I didn't even have Takas engaged in what was being discussed. So even he was effectively blindsided on Thursday just as much as anybody. And so that's a recognition on my part, even though the focus was to just bring awareness to our board, the ancillary pieces that need to be recognized by me when we go forward are critical. And as I was, thinking to myself, one of the things that I wanted to do when I first got here was help develop the relationship with BART. Lo and behold, that didn't happen as well as it should have on that first step. So it's my responsibility now to build that back up, which I plan on doing. And that's one of the key things that we have to do with Pam and the rest of the crew on BART is to identify those dollars, identify those costs, figure out what the right numbers are, and move forward from there. So.
Thank you. I appreciate your words. And I just want to say that on behalf of the executive staff that I've talked to, I know that they're very committed working with you and working with Takis. And again, I just like to be really clear on things. I think sometimes in government we talk around things, and I just want to just be direct, because I think that gives people confidence when they listen to us that we are not afraid to discuss the issues at hand. And I very much appreciate what you had to say. Thank you.
Yep. Director Dufty, I just want to also add to that. So as you heard, two different responses from Takis and Greg. Just the context I'll bring with it is that Takis and I were working through this PowerPoint presentation Thursday night, as well as with other staff. And so it was a very collaborative effort. I later learned late Thursday night, Friday morning about this VTA board workshop. And so best believe on Friday morning, we had a very lively discussion about why wasn't that part of the collaboration we had. We also had a discussion with Greg, and Greg not only acknowledged, but he apologized. So it's more than just the acknowledgement. He apologized for it. I'm sure there'll be times I will have to apologize for something that I might miss. So I just want to, at least for the record, say that at this table, there was certainly a detailed discussion as to what happened, how do we move forward, and I trust that we have course corrected in that regard.
Thank you. Before I go to Member McPartland, I'm going to go back to Carol when she has her hand back up. Oh, maybe she doesn't. So I'm going to go ahead and go to, did you want to say something, Carolyn?
Just, I think you had a couple other questions you had a question regarding expenditures and things like that. We would have to get back to you on that one. Thanks.
Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and go to Board Member McPartland.
Thank you. I appreciate all the speakers, both public as well as the comments from Director Dufty in relationship to peer review. And I've been solicited into a conversation on this. And as I look at the struggles that we have gone speaking in the VTA language and in BART language and trying to end up being bilingual, as we dig into this, I'm wondering whether or not the neutral peer review isn't essential that we end up doing to make sure that we're doing it right. And because I know that with the discussions that I've had in my area of concern is going to end up being in the safety, and everybody on both sides, both BART and VTA, have pretty much entrenched ourselves into the single bore idea. And I think that the peer review would be appropriate. It would end up taking away, assuming that we end up keeping the single bore, that it would take away any anxiety, or I shouldn't say anxiety, but trepidation that the public should have as we end up going forward. And I think it's essential from a transportation transparency standpoint that we end up doing that. So I'm going to come down on preferring that we end up having that independent peer review. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to go to Member Ames.
Thank you. So I agree with Director McPartland, and even Director Dufty, I think, also said he was open to a peer review, but I'm speaking on his behalf. Oh, thank you for agreeing. So the speakers, I think it really resonates with me that they want to see the cost comparison between the twin and the single bore. And I know I've brought this up as a way, it was really called a constructability review. You get a report on a constructability review that shows the cost of single bore versus twin bore construction wise, but you also could look at it from the pro and con and the amenities that you might get from this twin bore versus the single bore. You might get a totally new streetscape with the cut and cover twin bore option, which is all new streets, sidewalks, street lights, new utilities, but that there's a cost to that. But then the twin bore is, it's half the depth, or maybe a little bit, a third of the depth of the single bore. So you could compare a lot of these constructability issues related to each option, and then look at the risks. And there could be a risk to the boring option where, it's at the platform level, it's 100 feet deep. With the twin bore, it's like 50 feet deep, I believe. So with that depth comes, other unknowns with the soils. There's soil condition issues. I've talked to Carl Holmes about this. There's the groundwater table is really close to the surface, relatively close. So there could be groundwater issues with both of the construction methods, using the twin or the single bore. So I hope that this would be aligned with FTA's thinking, because I was surprised when FTA came out and said it was $9 billion. We were all surprised. We have a lot of surprises lately on this project. But I think it's a good thing to come up with this information now versus later, because typically a constructability analysis is done at 30% design. And fortunately, we have a twin bore option that's at 65% design. So we have a lot of information to do a constructability analysis. It may not take too long, and possibly the contractors that we select will benefit from these ideas, information that's generated. It may be some more cost savings that wasn't envisioned by the contractors or the staff. So I support a peer review. I hope, sorry, I rambled on that a lot, but I'm an engineer, so I know doing a constructability review right now we are at the crossroads. It's really important to do this right now before you launch into further design. You don't want to be at 65% design and pull back and say, oh, we made a mistake. So I think this is a great time to consider it. And I hope VTA and BART agree so that we have voter transparency. People are questioning the cost. FTA is questioning the cost. So this can just validate that we're on track with the best option, the most cost-effective option, and we can move forward with all of our partners. All right, thank you. I love this project. I want this to happen, and I want the voters to support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for all those comments. Are there any other member Chavez?
Thank you. I wanted to see if our staff could actually respond to Director Ames's question, and then I have some of my own.
Okay, Carolyn?
I can start on this one. I appreciate the concern. The twin bore has been a discussion, and we worked with BART looking at this a number of times. We've had a number of studies regarding single and twin. We've had experts come in over the 5 or 6 years that we've been studying this, and then there was a decision, an environmental document where the board selected the single bore, and we've moved forward on that, and that was based on a number of studies that we have done. The cost at the time, it was weighed based on the risks, and the risks are different for each. And a lot of it has to do with the construction methods. And I think Director Ames, like you said, there can be things that utilities can cause a disruption and a risk versus something else on the depth of the tunnel and that. So we continue to take a look at this. I think this is a good time when we talk to the contractor to see if there's ways to, in terms of depth of the tunnel, in terms of how we access those circulation issues, the fire life and safety, which we have addressed, but I think we continue to ask those questions. But I'm not sure that another peer review constructability review will bear a lot of difference at this point in terms of the costs to stop the project and then do that and then redesign and then move forward. If we saw the savings would have to be quite substantial. I'm not saying it couldn't be done. It's just that we have had a number of experts, everybody who've been tunneling, boring experts, to come into peer reviews on fire life and safety, to peer reviews, looking at the two. We've created a document that compares the two, twin bore versus double bore in the past. I know that because I was ran the program at the time. So I'm just wondering when would and I don't mean to be facetious, but is the answer that it's always going to be asked for until we do it, the twin bore? I don't know, because there always seems to be another question that's down the road. Because at the time that we were seeing the cost being roughly similar. So that's my only concern that I have, is when does the answer become?
So Carolyn, one recommendation I would make is that I think for the benefit of our colleagues, and especially given just the length of time of this program, that it's hard to remember each action that was taken, I would actually recommend that we pull the material together that demonstrates the reviews that occurred, because I know we had the tunnel in particular peer reviewed, and get that to our colleagues, because I think that just them knowing what those assessments were, and then perhaps regenerating all the reports that came out of it, and then getting them to the BART board members would be very helpful. I have a few more questions, and if it's okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. One question that I wanted to get asked or get answered is, could you, one of the staff, just talk about the opportunities for additional station access, given the where we are in the process today? I know that's come up a number of times. It's an area that I still have concern about as well, particularly as it relates to the Market Station and the Diridon Station.
Ms. Chavez, that's one of the reasons we stopped the station contract, as you know, is because we wanted to address these very specific issues. You know, we have a very live conversation going on with colleagues of City of San Jose. Even with Santa Clara, we have ongoing some discussion issues about access to the Santa Clara station. For that, be patient with us. I think before the end of the year, we should have something which we can brief the boards on this. Yes, there are quite a few good people looking at this stuff.
So just to confirm that there's research being done now that will be presented to both boards by the end of the year relative to access for Market Street, Diridon, and Santa Clara.
That's my target here. My target is, as soon as we get on with the first 3 contracts, while this conversation is going on, to have something to share with all of you by the end of the year. Yes.
And colleagues, I'll just share that this is a really big issue, as you can imagine, in downtown San Jose. And so there's a lot of interest in it, not just from me. And I know we have a couple of my colleagues that aren't able to join us today. So I felt very compelled to make sure we asked and answered that question, in addition to hearing it from the public, and I don't think it had been responded to. My next query is around the issue of the FTA's assessment. Could you just briefly explain the FTA's process and what the implications are of the FTA's analysis?
Do you like to hear from me or Caroline? I can tell you.
I think Carolyn's the boss. She decides.
Yeah, you can start talking, then I'll go.
As I have said numerous times before, and I know the FTA did not do a cost estimate. We do not have a cost estimate from FTA. FTA took our own estimate, and they did a probabilistic, like Bernice said, a probabilistic assessment. What if the gallon of fuel goes to $8? What if you have labor shortages and you can get labor to work? What if you have a chain supply delays and you can bring steel and concrete and so on here? Based on these probabilistic what if scenarios, they put an overall estimate to the project and said, we don't believe this, the 6.9, they said, it has a low probability. The best probability is 9.145. And they closed the conversation. And they went to Congress. They told them that's based on the FTA, their own rules. This is FTA rules. That's what they do for every project. They went to Congress and said, we believe this project is 9.145, and we want you to endorse that, approve it, and we're gonna come back to you for annual allocations, not to exceed 25%. That's how I understood it.
So-
I've been part of this of Carolyn.
Yeah, so I want to, because we just, we've gone through this, and I think, you're going through it with the core capacity work with the SIG program. Their risk assessment, particularly even when we had it on the first phase, they want to make sure that you have a funding available should these risks come, a certain amount of risk happens. Now, we didn't hit that cost estimate. We're under still on the phase one project. We're about 90 to 100 million savings we're seeing on that project. But I will say that the market right now, and the reason why the direction I've sort of given is trying to find a funding plan for 9.145 is we've had some meetings. We had meetings with all the mega projects across the country with Noria Fernandez as the FTA director to talk about what's going on with the economy and the budgets of these projects. We're seeing huge increases in construction costs due to labor shortages, supply chain issues, those areas. It will stabilize. It probably won't go as low as it used to be. Not that we expected it would be as low, but it's probably going to settle a little bit higher. And so I just want to be prepared that where we are, depending on no matter what the project that we're going to build, the final design of that project is going to be within those confines. And what we're seeing right now is construction cost increases upwards of almost to 20% for the year, and being thought about almost 16% next year, and then things stabilize. So we're seeing large increases in basic construction activities. And so all the transit GMs of all these projects, major project programs, delivery programs, are talking about this in the industry about what do we do. And that's the reason why there's a lot of discussion at the federal level as well as the state level, because LA's into this and Caltrain is into this, and maybe BART as well, is that the projects are escalating faster than anybody expected in these few years. So
Right.
we're continuing. So FTA, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So FTA, I think right now, their issue is they're investing a lot of money into these programs, and what it comes down to is they want to make sure that you have a funding plan that could cover the risks that might happen. They're happy when it comes in lower. They pay less too, but they just want to make sure that when they're selling this to Congress or anything, that the project is deliverable.
So Carolyn, I think the question that has caught people's attention is that the FTA review is being interpreted as primarily focusing on the tunnel construction. And so at least that's some of the comments that we heard today. So one other thing that I think would be beneficial, and I know you have done this for our board, but perhaps again, to share it both with the public and our colleagues at BART, is the overall, the summary of the assessment, and frankly, in writing, codifying what you just said about the risks in the market today, some of which, is probably related absolutely to going below grade, but we would be going below grade under any circumstance. So I think just making sure that our colleagues at BART and the public has some sort of summary, because there's a belief that somehow that's not public enough. And so I'll leave it to you and Bernice to determine the best way to do that, but I think it's critical. Colleagues, one last point I just want to make is that, everybody who's been engaged in BART for any period of time knows that Santa Clara County has been so interested in bringing BART that we worked closely to even help Alameda County build BART out so we could get it to our county shores. There is enthusiasm and a great desire to go beyond Berryessa to get BART into downtown and get it connected to the city of Santa Clara. I share that with you all because not unlike, and I really appreciate Bevan, your comments about the impact to the Mission District in San Francisco. we have been investing and reinvesting in downtown to engage it and liven it up. And the, one of our objectives is to make sure that we can have this very, very important transportation partner through BART without killing a city that we've been reinvesting in now for generations. So I just want to acknowledge that, going below grade, we know is expensive. We do have a high water table, but I will just acknowledge that if we could get BART across the bay, I'm confident that we can get it to the Diridon station with the leadership of all of you. So thank you, colleagues, for letting me take so much time.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to go back to Member McPartland.
Thank you. That last comment about if we can get across the bay, we ought to be able to get it into San Jose. That really resonates. I guess with all due respect to Carolyn, when she pointed out that we've already done these studies, we don't need to do them again. We've contracted and we've done the studies, but we ended up doing them from the perspective of is it feasible? Can we do it? I know that in the disagreements that we've had and finally coming together, we've all kind of gotten tunnel vision from the standpoint of a single board. And I've been working on understanding and giving feedback associated with that. And I ended up leaving the twin bore in the rearview mirror a long time ago. But the public has been asking the question, and now the economics potentially end up asking the same question. Do I want to end up having a twin bore going into the 21st century? I'd like to end up having a Cadillac instead of a Chevy. But the issue here is what has been asked for is an independent peer review at this point in time with these ambient conditions that we end up having. And I think that the public has that due to them. And I want to, as we end up going forward, I hope that we end up keeping the single board, but I have to end up going on board that, yeah, we ought to end up having that. We ought to have that independent review. Thank you.
Thank you. And back to Member Ames.
Thank you, Director McPartland, for bringing that up. I do appreciate, Carolyn, you've got some studies that were done, and I was told we were going to get some information on the website. It never happened. And it does seem right now, it's so important to be transparent about why we picked the single bore. And frankly, if there's all of these risks out there right now, we have more design on the single bore than we had before. We've got a 65% design for the twin bore. So we have a lot of information that we could refine what we have and compare the single to the twin. And if it's the same cost, we then would look at other risk factors to determine that the single bore is the best option. And I think you're never going to get 100% agreement from possibly, like you said, when are we ever going to stop this, stop the analysis? But then this is a really critical time in engineering, because you don't want to launch into something and get to 65% design and then say, oh my gosh, maybe we should reconsider, this is getting too costly. So we just want to know right now what road to take. If we want to go the single bore, or we want to go the twin bore, that probably won't happen, but you never know based on the findings. We would know which path to take, and that we told the voters, we were basing our information on fact, not fear of, going back to what we initially thought of, which was the twin bore. We just want to get the facts, and then we'll deal with, the trade-offs, because there are always trade-offs, right? I mean, I kind of personally like the twin bore. I've always thought that was a good idea because of the whole streetscape. But to Cindy Chavez's point, I mean, the businesses are going to be, there's a lot of investment in revitalizing the downtown, and they want to keep their streetscape vibrant. And so there will be disruption on the streets. I mean, if you do a cut and cover, but it has been done, and it is painful for the businesses. And maybe you can cost that out too. Like, what's the impact of the businesses with cut and cover? I don't know, there's probably other risks related to cut and cover that I'm not elaborating on, but I think it's worth the transparency right now. And I hope that this team can document what this is. So we have a factual assessment, a current updated factual assessment of the two options, pro and con, and then there's the cost. So that's it for me. Thank you for listening again. I appreciate the time.
Chair Hendricks.
Yeah.
This is Carl Holmes.
Sure, go ahead, Carl.
So I just wanted to focus on a few things and hopefully respond to some of the concerns and questions. And I'm not expecting it to fully answer everything, but I just want to make sure I go on record for saying a few things. One is I personally, as representing BART, did come to a special board meeting, I think 2, maybe 3 years ago, to say that BART agreed to move forward with the single bore. And that was including a portion of it being the stack configuration. That was even after both boards approved the environmental document to move forward with the single bore back in 2018. I also know project delivery, and even some of the projects that I'm personally and professionally responsible for, we have to deal with cost impacts, whether it's on a technical side of it, or if it's related to labor shortage or material supply chain issues. I get that. I also know that there are, regardless of the studies, and I'm not saying regardless, but in addition to the studies that have occurred in the past, there's also more current information in regards to tunneling projects in transit agencies. And I have one in my hand. It's a 200-page document by E&O Center for Transportation. And in that, it already talks about the cost per mile for tunneling projects. Some of them are LA Metro. And the 3 of the more recent projects that they have that are currently active right now, the cost per mile range from $1 billion per mile to $1.4 billion per mile.
In $2020.
Yeah, and that's in, as Taka said, in $2020. So even if we were to use that as an independent source of information, if you multiply that by 5 miles, 6 miles, you get a number that's higher than what people probably expect. So I also understand that it's easy to think that when the costs go up in one configuration of the project, that you can go back to a different configuration and you're using that old estimate. But what I'm trying to convey here is that this independent document is already showing that the transit tunneling costs are comparable to what is actually being expected for the single bore. I also know from before my days with BART, working as a contractor in San Jose, that San Jose has geotechnical conditions, soil conditions that aren't the greatest. And on top of that, there's a very high groundwater table. And to do a cut and cover, even the cut and cover phrase sounds like, oh, you just cut it open and cover it up. But it's not that easy, because you now have to deal with the soil conditions, and you can't just try to block it off as you have a rectangular prism or a boat that you're trying to protect. It will likely cause the need for a slurry wall, which is like a concrete wall. And then you have to make sure you cap it at the bottom, because you don't want water to penetrate underneath. So it's not as simple as, having shoring steel plates that are used for shoring to try to stabilize the excavation, and then you just move that along as you advance forward. This is a significant, let's just call it facility, that would have to be built in order to construct the twin bore. So with that, with the geotechnical conditions, the high groundwater table, and this independent document, I can say that simply saying going back to the twin bore, it's not as easy as that. And I think there's a lot of data that's recent and done independently that could show that the costs are comparable. And I think it's imperative upon all of us to try to make sure that going forward with the single bore, that we do it in a way that it's the best single bore. I can understand looking at streetscape and utility improvements, but I'm not a VTA employee, but even as a BART employee, we are not here to construct streets. We're here to construct transit. And I wouldn't want to just impose that on the city to say that you need to add those streetscape and utility costs to this transit project. So that's another element to maybe why the city is saying that they want to go with the single bore. On top of that, from a technical perspective, when you have to excavate or do the cut and cover, the amount of water that you have to try to protect or try to prevent from infiltrating the boat, let's just call it a boat for a temporary facility, it's significant, and there's a lot of room for error, and that could cause also structural concerns with the businesses. It's not just an economic concern with businesses, but it could cause more structural damage to businesses that are along Santa Clara Street. With the tunnel boring machine, yes, you still have to address geotechnical concerns and also the infiltration of water, but you're able to contain it better. And with the amount of time that you have to tunnel or advance the boring machine and then also try to protect it, there is a better probability of being able to have a more successful project with the single bore. So I just wanted to offer that. Thank you, Chair Hendricks.
No, thank you. So I think we've heard from everybody here. I haven't had a chance to go ahead and speak, so I'll just go ahead and offer my closing comments on where we're at. First off, I think this is an information only item, so I don't know that we're taking a vote or anything that says we're going to go ahead and do something. I do think it's clear that we've heard from many different people that we'd like to find a way, and I'm going to speak at a macro level here for a moment, to be able to try and find some more transparency, information, communication, timeliness of what we want to go ahead and do. Where that is on the dial, exactly what that's going to be, I think we can go ahead and talk about, but I think the message is very clear on being able to try and find some more transparency. I think it's unfortunate with the way government procurement rules work that we're at a part of the process where we really can't open up what's in the contract bids and stuff of what goes on. But I think we're only months away from being able to do that. And when we talk about everybody wants to see estimates of what's going on, Takis, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's in somewhere around by the October-ish timeframe, we're going to have hard contract numbers, what the deliverable actually is going to be, what the contract numbers will look like, what these potential innovations will look like. And we're going to be getting out of the realm of discussions about, well, let's estimate this or estimate that. And that at that point, we're certainly going to have some decision milestones that we're going to have to go ahead and make. So I'm really hopeful that we're going to get to some of those decision points and be able to see some of these things. And as I've told other people that have asked me about this, there's really two macro phases to this contract work. Is we need to get the contract defined and a contract amount set that's hopefully in line with what our previous estimates of what that number was, or whatever that is. That's one way we go ahead and help manage and maintain the cost and potential cost growth of this. And then once we have the contract, then there's a whole how you execute it so that that doesn't cost escalate and change orders and all those kind of things like that grow. So I think we're moving it in the right place. There's a process in place to go ahead and deal with this. But as I started my comments with, I think there are certainly some comments that valid comments that are being made about transparency and what can we do to either share existing information? Is there additional information that could be done that doesn't go ahead and delay the work that's already in motion for what goes on? And I think, again, this is an information only item. I think the comment has been heard by both of our staffs. So let's try and find some way and define to be able to get that transparency, take the existing information, any new studies or something that can be done that don't delay and stop or slow down any of the current work, to be able to try and get more information out. So as we get to some of these future milestone decisions, there's just more information, more transparency. The public is more aware of what's going on for what's been happening. So those are just my kind of thoughts, I think, of how we might be able to take this and move forward. Are there, I hesitate to ask, but any other last comments by any of the board members? I'm going to take that as a no. So that takes the end of item 3. I'm to item 4, which is announcements. Anyone have any announcements to make? But before we go to specific announcements, I do want to say General Manager Powers, I think that does sound cool, that he did make the comment about we should try and look at frequency of when this group is meeting. So I'm going to point to the staffs and say, here, let's figure out what the next best time for us to get together is. Let's not have it be way out in the future. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts, if we're looking, 2-3 months out, in the timeline for us to be able to get together. But I think staff's clearly heard we should be meeting more frequently. So I'm sure they'll try and come up with an appropriate time for that. Does anyone, item 4, any announcements anyone has to make? I'm not seeing any announcements. So that's going to take me to number 5, adjournment. So I want to go ahead and I want to thank everybody who attended, our board members, staffs, member of the public. I think we actually had open, honest, transparent dialogue, which is really good for us to be able to go ahead and do. And I think that's really important. I think staff has gotten lots of feedback from us today. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn our meeting at 3:42 today. I want to thank you all for attending, and everyone stay safe.
Thank you, everyone. We will end the meeting for all now.